Ready, down, put.
Welcome everyone to Legion Gaming. I'm your host Donnie. Today I'm joined by my co-host Deucy.
Are you ready for some... Wait, no. Are you prepared for some pigskin? I didn't want to get copyrighted there or anything.
That's fine. We cannot afford to be copyrighted at this point. Neither of us. So if that didn't clue you in, Deucy, put this on the calendar. You got me looking forward to talk about some football here.
I know. Everybody, this is a monumental day, but I had to make some exceptions. Like, this is going to be all arcadey, fun, over-the-top football.
Yeah, and this is right up my alley because, as I mentioned before in the podcast, if you had listened to us before, I'm not a fan of sports in general. Just, hockey's like the only thing I'll kind of watch. Football maybe second, and the rest like baseball, basketball, absolutely not. But sports games, I actually enjoy those quite a bit. Obviously more on the arcade side, so it was really great that you suggested this topic, Lucy, because it's perfect for the both of us, where it's like you're well into the football world. I am very much on the outside. Like,
yeah, I feel like sometimes I'm a unicorn, and our good friends Mike and Randy, them too. We're really big fans of video games, but we're also really big fans of sports, like a lot of different sports. And you don't usually hear that on these video game podcasts. Where,
it's usually either or.
Yeah, they just talk so much trash about sports games and things. It's like, well, no, there's a place for both.
Yeah, and that's always been my position. Obviously, it's like just because I don't like sports doesn't mean sports are awful. I just don't care.
Yeah,
I just don't enjoy watching it. But the games, I enjoy playing those. I may not buy them year in year out, and it's like most of us don't either. Frankly, I don't think
not anymore.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Even back in the day, I would do like every other year.
Yeah, right.
Even for my favorite sports like NASCAR, I would still skip a year here and there.
Yeah, and that's totally fine because in most instances, even now, like you're not going to see massive upgrades year to year. But also, I'm not going to trash them because they sell very, very well, and it makes sense that they'll keep making them. People will keep buying them.
And every once in a while, there's like a surprise, like the return of college football.
Yeah, that one, I've heard nothing but great things about that. And it's always after there's a lot of hype for how EA is going to revamp the game or whatever. And this seems like this is the first time they've actually revamped things.
Yeah.
And it's been successful.
But I'm sure next year, like college football 26 will just be a rehash.
It could be. Or they could surprise us and say, you know what, you expect a rehash. We're actually going to elevate it a little bit more. We're going to take cues from NFL 2K before they were ripped from from the gaming world thanks to the EA.
Maybe they could even implement some of this stuff into the Madden series, inject some new life into that one.
I think they will at some point. I feel like this is almost like a prototype boilerplate for whatever they want to do with Madden next.
Yeah.
But then the other side's like, how long is this generation going to last, right? Because we're 5 years in the PS5 Series X generation. How much longer is it before they revamp Madden and then they have to revamp it again to whatever the next generation consoles are?
Oh, yeah. There's going to be that weird middle ground where both generations are out at once and neither one are good.
Exactly, yeah. So it's rough. For football fans, they couldn't care less, and that's fine.
Yep.
But it's also understandable where it's like, other fans would be like, no, I want a total, revamp or some reason to spend $70 on this thing.
And what we really need is more of these arcade titles that we're talking about.
Absolutely.
For the people that don't like the hardcore sim stuff, but like you, still enjoy sports games.
Yeah, and exactly. And so today we're going to talk about a few different series, I should say. We're talking about the Tecmo Bowl series, and we're also talking about NFL Blitz, which was a big favorite of mine back in the day, thanks to NBA Jam, and also the NFL Street series, which I have some fondness for, but I didn't love as much as the NBA Street and other EA big games. But they're still fun games nonetheless. So I think this will be a really fun run-through for most of these games.
Yeah, I'll probably talk about it later, but I do want to revisit the NFL Street Series because back then I didn't like it as much as the NBA, like you said, but I played it expecting the NBA series when I shouldn't have.
That's exactly it. So when we get to that, I have similar thoughts, and we'll kind of break things down because I did get to revisit it this week, and I had some thoughts that were different than what I thought like 20 years ago, because the NFL Street Series released in 2003. Tecmo Bowl started way back in '87, so we're covering quite a gamut of years here for like arcade football games. So before we get to all that fun, what have you been playing lately, Deucy? I know there's a lot because a lot of games have come out since the last time we've recorded.
Yeah, and I know we've kept our listeners up to date with the little things here and there on our Instagram posts. But aside from all of those, I did start Mafia: The Definitive Edition, and I really, really enjoy that game. Like, it's so weird. It's kind of a blast from the past, but it does have the modern, like, remastered graphics and everything. I'm also kind of interested in seeing what it looked like way back when it first came out, because I think it was on the PS2 generation.
It was on Xbox. I forget if it was on PS2. It was PC and Xbox for sure.
Wow.
I forgot if it was. I forgot if the first game was on PS2 or not. I can't remember.
Yeah, it was, but I just know it was that generation, which is kind of mind blowing.
Yeah, that's easily 20 plus years ago now.
And that's the generation that Grand Theft Auto 3 came out. So this is clearly like a clone of that, sort of. But the way the missions are and the way the story is being told, it was already an upgrade from Grand Theft Auto 3 at the time. Like, I am just all for mafia type movies, and this is playing out like one of those.
It is, and it's much more focused. And I did beat this game when it came out. It must have come out like 5 years ago now, 6. I don't know how long ago it was, but I played it on Xbox One, and I played right through it because it's a nice tight game. Like, it's kind of open world, right? But it's not really like GTA open world. So I think it was like 12 or 15 hours, which is just what it needed to be. Like, that's perfect length for the story it had.
I must be getting pretty close. I think I'm up to the year, oh gosh, I want to say 1935-ish in the story.
I forgot when it ended.
Yeah, because I know, it's being narrated, or your character is talking to the feds in 1938, and then he keeps flashing back. But it's getting closer to that 1938 time, so I must be getting close to the end. But the one little gripe I have with it is the fact that, like, they tried to build it up as an open world game. Like, you have your guy that works on the cars, and he's like, if you ever get this certain type of car, just bring it back to me, and I'll fix it up. And I'm like, I never have time to go out and get cars.
Yeah.
Like, every mission starts, and you have to go and talk to your boss or something, get the mission, and then do it.
And if I recall, there's also, you can't really explore further, right? Like, usually there's like these invisible walls, I think. Like, there's sort of like an area they want you to be restricted to. So even if you want to explore to get cars, which, if I recall correctly, really didn't mean much, because you weren't, like GTA, you would collect cars and you would go explore the entire open world.
Yeah.
This is like such smaller chunks of an open world that I felt no reason to collect cars. And that was kind of one of the gripes I had with when I played through, is that, and that also that some of the early 2000s gameplay was still rooted in the game. Like, some of it was clunky. There's some things where, like,
stealth is like almost non-existent.
Stealth is awful. If I recall, I think there was one level like where you're on a boat and, like, I would fail objectives for no reason. Like, I couldn't figure out why.
Oh yeah.
And that's just like, I remember doing that with those games back then. It's like, who died in the midst of this where I failed? Like, tell me. I just want to know so I know it can't happen again.
There was one mission kind of early on where I was trying to sneak up on a guy, and I don't know, I was doing the crouch walk, but somehow he just magically knew to turn around every time.
So it's like the game looks gorgeous, but it feels like that they could have cleaned up the actual gameplay a little more, like done some more tweaking, because some of the old relics of that time are still there, and they're just as annoying as ever. But with that said, I think it's a really solid game. Like, it's a solid 7 out of 10 at best, just for what it is.
Yeah, it's definitely going, if we do another, Game of the Year episode, it's going on my list for that.
Yeah, like, I really enjoyed it, but it's also something that I wouldn't revisit again, which is fine. Like, you probably aren't meant to revisit this thing over and over and over, unless you want to do a playthrough of the whole trilogy,
which
like
I'm about to.
Run. Yeah.
I mean, I played Mafia 3 a while ago, back when it was first out, and I really enjoyed that game. It was probably the first open world game I had finished in a long time.
Wow.
And it made me want to go back to the first two, but luckily I held off until they did those remasters of 1 and 2.
You waited for a good time, because all 3 are out now, and I'm sure 3 has been updated with whatever definitive and whatever other stuff they've done over the years too.
I feel like because I had a save of the third game, or maybe this was just what they did with the definitive, but in Mafia 1, there are some things from the third game that you can use, like the car.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe they did do something with the save, or maybe that was their way of trying to connect the two games. I don't know. I have to look that up. That's an interesting point.
Yeah, because I went to my garage, and here's a whole bunch of cars from like the 1920s that barely have like 5 horsepower, barely can make 80 miles per hour. And then all of a sudden there's this like Dodge Charger looking car
That's funny.
Unofficially named, but like it's got like 300 horsepower and it'll just tear through the streets. I'm like, that doesn't seem fitting.
Oh, that was one thing that was annoying as hell in that game too. Is that now you brought up the speed of the cars. Is when you're chasing something. That's what really was, I think, the most annoying part was if you're chasing another car. These cars have such garbage acceleration. Like if you hit, a cardboard box, one little thing, you're not going to catch up to that guy you're chasing.
No.
And that's it. The mission, may as well just restart the mission. So it's funny you sparked that flashback because I do remember being really annoyed at that where it's like, if you have the most clean, perfect run, and it could be like traffic hitting you out of the way, it's over. It's like, come on, guys. Like, you updated everything in the game, but that.
You're like, oh, sorry, I had to make a turn, and that was too slow.
I made a wrong turn. Now it's costing me the mission. Yeah.
I also got into, this kind of tore my attention away from Mafia a little bit, but they released the Black Ops 6 beta, and boy, I am having a ton of fun with that. Like, I haven't been excited for a Modern Warfare in a while. And like Modern Warfare 3 came and went, and I've only been playing it because it's free on Game Pass now. But this one, I'm like, I am ready for this to release. Like, I don't know, just the way they have that Omni movement and everything, even though I don't fully utilize it, it still does make your running and your movement feel a lot smoother and a lot more like what your brain wants you to do in the matches.
What you feel like you should be doing in the first place when you're playing these games. Yeah, especially with the movement. I want to play it. I didn't get to play the beta because I didn't have Ultimate Game Pass and I didn't pre-order the game. I'm definitely going to end up getting Black Ops 6 because it's the same like you and I. We stopped playing Call of Duty for a very long time. And then we started to get back into it with Modern Warfare 2019 and then Warzone and everything. We got like Cold War, which to me, that might have been like my favorite out of the recent ones outside of like 2019.
Yeah.
So I'm glad to see that Black Ops 6 is going to be a lot like Cold War because I liked the multiplayer in Cold War a lot. Like it was such Twitch-based 100 miles an hour movements that I really enjoyed. It was like almost like an arena shooter at that point for me.
This one, like, you know how we always have complaints about the guys who jump around a lot and slide. But this one makes it feel like a 90s action movie.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. So you're like, okay, that was kind of bull that you hit me that way, but it also looked cool.
Yeah, and I'm going to John Woo you to death or something. That's awesome. Yeah, that comes out end of October, so I'm probably going to end up getting it because I'm not going to pay $20 a month for Game Pass for that. I couldn't believe it. Like, they wanted me to upgrade to get the beta because it was already installed and whatever, but I only have Game Pass Core just play online with you guys, and like, I couldn't believe that the upgrade is $20 a month for Game Pass. And like, I didn't know. I knew it was getting a price increase, but I didn't know it already happened, and it was $19.
What's kind of sad, but also inevitable, is they've got that new tier coming out. It's called Standard.
That's right.
And that's also not going to have day one releases for these new games.
Yeah, I forgot about that. In which, God, I remember when that was announced, I was like, that was the whole point of Game Pass. You're always flexing how you have day one releases, so now you have to pay $20 a month.
For the Ultimate.
Although, I don't know if is it going to go up again, do you know, when that new tier-based thing rolls out? Not. I don't even know.
It shouldn't. Like, just make the other one cheaper, and people will want that. And that one is still going to get you more than, like, the basic one that you have.
Yeah.
So there's, like...
Well, I think they're limiting mine.
No,
they're still keeping it?
They're still keeping that.
Okay.
But it's going to just be a middle tier. And it's going to be what we have now, just minus the day one releases.
I see. Yeah, which really sucks. Like, it's... that was, like, one of the big, features of Game Pass, and now it's just become...
Another subscription service.
It's another subscription service, which, for me, I have PSN. I'm totally happy with that because they get a ton of games. And also, like, I buy a lot of games anyway. So it's like I don't need that day one stuff as much. But it sucks that, like, one of the big perks of Game Pass is now being taken away. And, yeah, it's really unfortunate. So basically, like, I'm just going to end up buying it for Xbox Black Ops 6 because it's basically my Call of Duty machine at this point.
Yeah.
And my PGA machine.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Have you been playing anything else? Because you got the beta and you're playing...
Mafia. And then just last weekend... Was it last weekend? Yeah, as of this recording. I went old school with it, and we actually went to a barcade up in San Jose area called Mini Boss.
Yeah, I've heard this one. I've had friends tell me it's pretty fun over there.
It's actually, surprisingly well kept. Like, not too many... I didn't really notice any broken machines except for on the 4-player Pac-Man.
Oh, that's a major plus.
Yeah.
Pac-Man's always broken, though. I feel like we played another arcade where one of the sticks was...
Yeah, the yellow Pac-Man, you couldn't go up or down. Only left or right. Yeah. So if you could somehow get them to come down into your path, you could just go left and right on them. But, yeah, there were a lot of good classics in there. Some I had never really seen. Like, They had Moonwalker.
Yeah, I've never seen. I don't know if Galloping Ghost had that one. I think I've seen it there, but it's that one you never see anywhere.
They had Narc, which I've never seen in an arcade. I've only played it on Nintendo. And then our friend Juan and we played WWF WrestleFest.
Yeah, that was one of my favorites growing up. Chuck E. Cheese had that or Superstars. I forgot which one, but I would play that all the time when I was there.
I never even heard of it. Like, I don't even remember you or Mike or anybody talking about
that's
it.
So surprising.
In passing.
Yeah.
And
it's one of the more awesomely gorgeous arcade games from that time. It looks really good.
It played pretty smooth. We there's only 2 buttons and then the stick, and we still somehow like figured out what to do really quick on the fly. Like, one was punch, one was kick. Both of them seemed to be like grapple seemed to be if you just ran into the guy.
Yes.
And then like
it's kind of hard to do sometimes.
And then you had to outmash your opponent to get the actual slam on. But pinning was hard as hell with a tag team going on because the other tag guy always came in and helped out.
Yeah, I think exactly. Can you tag them out or is there free for all? I might have played the free for all mode.
You tag. That was another thing we had to figure out. And for an old game, it was surprising how it was specific. You had to be in the tag corner to tag.
That makes sense. They want to keep it kind of true to WWF at the time. Yeah, that's one of the more awesome arcade games I'd ever played when I was a kid because I was a huge wrestling fan. And those sprites in that game are gorgeous. It has like all the, I think it has Big Boss Man's in there, Hogan, I'm sure, Warrior, the Legion of Doom, like it had all the guys you were, looking up to as a kid in WWF. So that's fun that you got to experience it for the very first time.
Yeah, I was like, whoa. Hidden treasure.
Yeah, seriously.
It's so funny because we were also standing there and we were just about to go, but they have security kind of walking around. And there were these guys at NBA Jam and they were getting into it. They were just yelling and hooping and hollering and everything. And I was sitting there going, it must be rough for security at these barcades because you don't know if it's an actual bar fight because of alcohol or if people are just really excited about the games.
Yeah. It's like, oh no, they're just playing Street Fighter. It's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's pretty good. I have been wanting to go there. That place has been open for a while now, but yeah, I just haven't gone. Like I always heard how fun it is. Like the Retro Game Guys, a podcast. I think they're coming out with another episode at some points. I don't know. But they went there. They were the ones who kind of told me about it. And also when I lived up there. And yeah, it was also, I think it came out around the pandemic time, which is also why I never went in there.
So glad it survived.
Some around there, yeah. Thank goodness it survived.
It's it's cool. Right down the street. It's within walking distance of that game store.
I know.
Downstairs.
Yeah, it's pretty damn close. It's like just a hop, skip, and a jump away. Yeah. What I've been playing, there's been so much out that I've been playing and trying to get to. So I guess one of the bigger ones that you even posted on Instagram was Black Myth Wukong on PS5.
Oh man, that's been everywhere.
Yeah, that game got a lot of hype beforehand. And it was one of those games where they announced it a while back. It looks gorgeous, and it released recently on Steam, and it got like it sold like I don't know 10 million in the first week or something crazy like that, and like it had 2 million concurrent players on the first couple days. So I got the PS5 version. It looks really incredible. It's kind of like, I guess like your first inkling would be like, it's kind of like a Souls-like game, but it's not at all. The only instance it is like if you die, you get sent back to the checkpoint, but you don't lose XP. You have to recollect. It's
nice.
More like a Ninja Gaiden or Stellar Blade. And it looks really incredible. It's freaking hard because there are so many sort of bosses around the areas that you have to clear them out. And then they either give you like these souls that you can summon, which are sort of like your... they're like your backup kind of or backup help, where it's like you might summon like serpents that spit poisonous things that'll poison the enemies. And then you have to level up. So it's one of those things where you have to get in the groove of grinding the game out because you're going to get destroyed by whatever boss you're facing. Grind out, beat that boss, find out that there's an even bigger boss you have to fight.
Of course.
Like I fought this giant tiger who was like a kung fu tiger. I was like, damn, he's kind of tough. Like it took me a few tries. And I thought he was the end of the chapter. And I was like, oh, he's not.
Wait. Is it an actual tiger?
Yeah, he's I'll send you. He's like a gigantic tiger.
So it's like Kung Fu Panda?
Yeah, pretty much. And also, it's like this is based on the Chinese myth of Wukong.
Oh yeah,
right. And it's also like do you ever play that game Enslaved back in the day on 360?
No.
That had a similar arc where it's like it took the story and adapted it in its own sort of sci-fi thing. But this is like loosely based on that same myth. So you're playing as the destined one who's just like a monkey, like the Monkey King. And you have to go through and basically fight gods. So I've been enjoying the hell of it. It's just really hard where it's like, I get to like, I'm at the end of chapter 2 now, and I'm finding this giant, like, I don't know what he is. I think he's like a rat boss or something like that. but he's huge. So it's like I get to a point where like I lose, 10 times. I go play something else. I go back to it. I beat the boss in one try, that kind of groove. So that's been really fun. And then more importantly, that they still dropped out of nowhere is the Castlevania Dominus collection
Oh,
that I've been
yes.
back into. I'm obviously we're both huge Castlevania fans. And they released the Castlevania Advance collection, I think it was a year or two ago where it was. It was pretty recent, I think. And then out of nowhere, Konami just in the middle of a Nintendo Direct decided they wanted to release the entire DS trilogy for Switch, Xbox, PS5, and PC.
I remember when the Advanced Collection came out, and we were like, "Oh, but this would be great too if they brought out the DS ones because those are a little more rare."
They're a little bit harder to find, and also like you have to play them on the DS or a 3DS. There's no other way you can play them because of the touchscreen stuff. So it's pretty incredible that they, for one, even released it, but also they adapted the touchscreen for modern consoles. So, on the Switch, it's great because you can use the touchscreen if you're playing portable to like do the seal tracings or whatever other functions for like Dawn of Sorrow.
Oh yeah.
Or one cool thing that I found accidentally was there's a button combo you can enter to draw the seal. It's hard to do. I imagine if you figure it out and remember, it's fine. But recalling Dawn of Sorrow after playing through everything, I was like, holy crap, there's so much I remember about this game. But then I also am like, I'm almost at the end where I beat Dimitri, and then you have to go back to get the true ending.
Yeah.
So I did that, and now I have to fight Death and Dracula. But there's certain things like certain souls I have to get, and then I'm suddenly remembering like the grinding I had to do in the DS version because I 100%ed it back then. And like, there's an item there called a Soul Eater Ring where it's like $300,000. I was like, oh god, I'm not doing this again. I'm not going to get 100% in this one.
It was like that in Aria of Sorrow too.
Yeah, same thing. So it's like I'm going to beat this Dawn of Sorrow, but I don't think I'm going to go 100%. I just have to get through it, which I'm very close to the end because then we get to Portrait of Ruin and then eventually Orb of Ecclesia because I haven't beaten Ecclesia. I've beaten Portrait of Ruin.
Yeah. I remember when I got Aria of Sorrow. When you got me that Game Boy Advance, and then I was playing that, and then shortly after that, the collection came out. So I was like,
"Yeah, that's right."
Okay, I guess I will. I'll play Aria on Switch, and then I beat that on Switch, and I was like, "Man, I really want to play Dawn of Sorrow again because that was the one I owned for the DS, but I didn't want to, dig out my DS and dust it off." And then this collection came out very shortly after I just bought Portrait of Ruin and Order physical. I was like, there goes my timing again.
Yeah, I was like encouraging, hey, snatch those up. They're worthwhile. They're pretty inexpensive right now for the carts, And then they still dropped it. And it's $25, which is a steal because each of those games, I think the loose carts are probably like, I don't know, $30-$40 each, $20 to $40 each.
I think Dawn is probably worth the most.
Yeah,
it?
maybe.
Yeah.
And then there's obviously, if you want complete, they're all like, like $80. I think the Order of Ecclesia is like $150. So.
Jeez.
It's nuts,
yeah.
So it's like just if you have any interest in the DS games, buy the Dominus collection. It's a freaking steal for $25. They're all fantastic games.
I now have every Castlevania that you need all on my Switch.
Yeah, which is amazing. Except
three
there's
collections.
There's one that they're missing. And that's Symphony of the Night. That's the big one that
one I have on PlayStation.
On PlayStation. Who knows if they'll release it on Switch? It'd be a no-brainer, but we'll see.
We don't even have to go outside for this.
We don't, which we didn't to begin with when we were kids. So it's perfectly like it was 30 years ago.
Which is another reason why I'm surprised that video gamers don't like sports games more. You don't have to go outside.
Yeah, but on the flip side, I also understand that like these are a different pace, especially if you're playing the simulation games. Like baseball sims are probably the worst for me because of the pace. So I guess I get it, but at the same time, I do enjoy playing like football games, basketball. It's just I'm more on the arcade side, which is a good precedent for what we're talking about today. So, Deucy, today we're going to talk about all these arcade games. We're starting off with Tecmo Bowl, which I know was a big cornerstone of you growing up.
Yep.
Right? Because I remember seeing it in your house. I might have played at your house, but I had never played this until then. So this was originally released in arcades in 1987.
Which I did not know.
I didn't know that either because I don't remember seeing this ever back then. And then it was eventually released on the NES in February 1999. There's also a Game Boy version in 1991. The arcade one's pretty unique because it has like a 2-monitor setup for 4 players, and you can also break tackles in that version, which I didn't realize you couldn't do in the NES one.
You can very rarely if you mash the buttons.
Oh, I see. Okay, I didn't figure that out. I was just getting stuffed each time. And the NES version had a mix of rosters, names, and stats from 1987-88 season. So it was relatively fresh when it came out on the NES.
Which, as a kid, I didn't realize. I knew that it didn't have the team licenses, but I also didn't realize, because I always played as the Bears, but I didn't know the Bears roster from like 87 or 88.
Yeah.
If I had played as maybe the Raiders with Bo Jackson or the Niners, I probably would have recognized the names then. But
yeah, and even then, like I don't know, it's weird to think of a time when when you weren't having actual NFL teams in an NFL game, but it's interesting back then. Like I guess the rights were kind of flopping around because like Tecmo had some of the rights, and then I think it was LGN had the rights to like the names or something like that.
it had the teams, which we had that
teams.
We had that NFL game too. Mm-hmm. It was just LJN NFL.
Yes,
like this is the NFL symbol on the cart, and God, that was dirt slow. Like this when we got Tecmo Bowl, I don't even know how we decided to get it. I don't think I rented it. Maybe I rented it first. But it was just a godsend compared to that NFL game we had.
Was this something your parents were playing the hell out of too? Because I know your parents were, or at least your mom was heavy into football.
Not the hell out of, but I think my dad would play me in Tecmo Bowl just like he would play me in Bases Loaded.
Yeah.
Although he couldn't fall asleep at this one. Like you got to pay attention in football.
Yeah. So this is like one of the most notable football games in gaming history. And it might be rooted because of Bo Jackson, Deucy. Mm-hmm. What was he on the Bears back in the day too?
No, the Raiders.
The Raiders. Okay,
yeah.
So Bo Jackson, this game was called the greatest video game athlete of all time by ESPN and USA Today, because his stats were just completely off the charts. Like he was basically a broken player in this game.
And like I said, I never played as the Raiders because he's in Tecmo Bowl and then Tecmo Super Bowl. Mm. I never played as the Raiders, so I never knew that he was in the first one and could be so broken. I recently played it on the Switch, and they don't have the names anymore.
Yeah, they took them out, right?
But they still have the numbers and they still have the stats. So I played as the Raiders, and there's this one run, I think it's up in A when you choose the plays. He just goes up to the top of the screen, and nobody will ever catch him.
Oh my god! Yeah,
it is a guaranteed touchdown every time.
Yeah, was he? Do you know if he was like the biggest? Was he like the most high-profile player at the time? Then was he like the guy? Is that why they made him broken in this game?
Yeah, because he was actually doing two sports. He was doing football and baseball.
Oh, good God!
And he was amazing at both. Mm. So it was just crazy to see him. You could see there's like YouTube clips of him just basically doing what he did in Tecmo Bowl. He would just run through people and all the way out. There's one, I think, where he just ran and he kept running through the tunnel. Mm. He couldn't stop.
That's so ridiculous. Yeah, so this game, I don't know. I think this game is probably the best football game on the NES. I really don't think anyone talks as favorably about other games or other NFL games as much as they do this one. Like, this one seems like...
Well, this is the first one. They talk the most favorably about the next one we'll talk about, Super Bowl.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, on the Nintendo.
Yeah.
On the Nintendo specifically, yeah. So this, for me, like, it's funny to me because whenever I hear Tecmo Bowl, like, I always think it's just that, the NES game.
Yeah.
But it's like, I tend to forget that it actually went beyond that, which you have way more experience than I do with these because it ended up being on more systems than I anticipated. And we actually discovered recently, like literally 2 days ago, that there was a PS1 version that exists. So
yeah, that blew
there's
my
some
mind.
legs on Tecmo Bowl. It's a lot more than what the NES game had.
After watching a little bit of it on YouTube, though, I could see why the PS1 version didn't really make a splash. The sound is kind of garbage. It seems more like a novelty, but I'm definitely going to look for it at shops.
Me too. Like, I would actually like to have that because it is kind of a cool piece of, sort of football and Tecmo history that it went that far.
Yeah.
Because, again, we always talk about the Nintendo version, but I feel like the other versions aren't as talked about.
No. Yeah, like I said, the Nintendo and then Super Nintendo ones are definitely the ones that made it a household name. Like, what was it? In IGN, they ranked it number 53, Tecmo Super Bowl, this is 53 out of the top 100 NES games.
Which is really high.
A PC Magazine had a top 10 most influential games of all time, and this was 10th. Mm-hmm. Like, that is bonkers that this is an arcade football game. People now think of football as Madden and only Madden, but this was the start of it all, really. Tecmo Super Bowl was the first sports game to combine the names of the players with the teams. They got both licenses at once.
Yeah, you said they got all 28 teams on this one, and there's a roster from the 1990 season. Is that for the NES one?
Yeah, the 93 for Super Nintendo, and then the 96 season On PS1,
That makes sense.
It added the two teams, the Panthers and the Jaguars, and then it had all of those players as well. But yeah, it's surprising that the Nintendo one, I guess because of, like we say, we never keep the boxes.
Yeah.
But a complete NES version is $75.
Yeah.
Whereas a complete Super Nintendo one is like $38.
Which is even, $75 for a sports game on Nintendo, I'd say it's pretty up there. Like,
yeah.
And I say that like that's probably reasonable for a complete game on the Nintendo. But at the same time, like, if you look at like as a sports game, it shouldn't be that expensive. But I think this one's more significant than others because I imagine like you could probably find that LGN NFL game complete for like, $25 maybe.
Maybe.
I can't imagine it's that much more expensive.
That almost seems like too much.
Yeah.
Although that one, I think I've said it before, but that one requires it to be complete because the plays you pick are on a separate sheet.
Oh God, that sounds so awful.
Yeah, you still do the up, left, right, A button like combination thing, but you better have that sheet off to the side so you actually see if it's a run or a pass play.
That sounds freaking awful. And I'm sure now it's like not as bad because you just get like a chart online.
Yeah.
But I imagine if you rented that game, you'd be done. You'd be just lost.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess we're lucky that we picked that one up for home use. But when I got Tecmo Bowl and the plays were right there on the screen, that was another reason I loved this one more than that.
I thought that was really cool because I don't know. This is kind of a rare case where probably the home version is better than the arcade one. Like even if you go back to Tecmo Bowl, like I only saw videos of the arcade version, and like it looks better and it probably controls a little bit better. But as far as like actual football, like
like you said, there's only two teams on the arcade.
Yeah,
version.
it was like Wildcats and what was the other one? I forgot. Wildcats and Bulldogs. Just nobodies.
Yeah.
But then Tecmo Super. So I did play that on Super Nintendo. What was it? 2 days ago, I think it was, or last night actually. I was pretty impressed with this one.
Oh yeah, me too.
Actually, like the graphics are really nice for out when you're not doing the field stuff. Like it still looks okay there. Like you're sort of looking at like a side scroller with like these tiny little sprites, colliding with each other.
They're a little more shaded now than they were on Nintendo. They look a little more human.
There's a little more detail to them.
But yesterday was it yesterday? Yeah, I played Super Bowl for the first time on Super Nintendo. I never had it when I was growing up, and I was surprised with like the cutscenes. Like,
they were really nice.
You throw a ball, and if it just barely misses the defender, it'll actually switch to a cutscene of the defender missing the interception.
Yeah, which feels like an arcade thing, right? Because you'd see that in some arcade gamers, like they want to emphasize some sort of action.
Yeah,
and they zoom in. There's like this big old cutscene or something. So, I'd scored a touchdown. All of a sudden, I see like the two players celebrating there and like high five. Whenever I was like, this looks pretty damn good. Like the sprites are really nice for those cutscenes.
It was also impressive that the one on Super Nintendo, I don't know if Nintendo did this, but Super Bowl started stat tracking so that you could play a season, and if you're throwing a certain amount of touchdowns, like it'll actually remember that.
Oh, that's incredible.
Whereas like if you play Tecmo Bowl on Nintendo, there's these little stats up in the corner, but they're like the stats of the player in real life at the time, and they never move. So it kind of gives you an idea of how good that player is, but also doesn't change based on your performance.
Yeah, so you're really supposed to use them to their strengths more than anything else, which is a pretty cool little feature.
But when I was playing the Super Bowl game yesterday, like I said, I got this I think at a shop, or maybe I got it in the video game box, monthly box. I was just playing a preseason game real quick. I made the matchup, the game that was actually going on last night, the Packers versus the Eagles. And then I went into the season mode. I didn't want to start a season, but I went into it to check it out and see what it looked like. And I was like, why are the Jets highlighted? Why is it already week 17? Why are they assuming I would play the Jets of all teams? And then I realized, this save file is still intact.
That's really incredible.
Like, this game is now 30 years old, and somebody had played, and I read up that you can play 3 full seasons. You can start in 91 and go to 92 and then 93. This person was already in the 93 season. I was like, wow, impressive, with the Jets of all teams.
See, that's a dedicated sports fan right there too. Also, it could be fun. Maybe your copy came from from like across the country.
I was going to say
like, it made its way through.
This had to be an East Coast player. Yeah. There's nobody out here playing as the 93 Jets.
The kid's probably like, hey, I took them to 3 Super Bowls, buddy.
That's the only time they saw it.
It's pretty great. Yeah. So this was released on the Genesis as well. I didn't get to play this version.
That one, I looked up the prices. That one is like the least, like a complete copy of that is $7.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
Wow. So
I don't know.
Although, see, so Genesis had so many other sports games that I imagine like, Tecmo wasn't like their cream of the crop.
Yeah, I didn't realize Tecmo was on it at all.
Yeah, me neither. Like that's what I mean is like with this series, I was kind of relegated to like the NES era, not
like,
so much Super Nintendo.
Madden famously got its start really on Genesis.
That's where it really hit it big, I would say.
Yeah,
that's
like I mean, it was kind of on
notable.
Super Nintendo, but people loved it more on Genesis. So like once he came in, nobody cared about the arcadey ones or anybody else.
I think that's a good point because that's when really like EA was such a big thing on the Genesis, especially with their sports game like the NHL games particularly, right?
Yeah.
That it makes sense that most anything else, if it wasn't like Joe Montana Football or EA, it wasn't going to get much attention. So I guess it kind of makes sense that the Genesis version of Tecmo Super Bowl was, it's worth nothing.
Yeah,
that's like you find a story like, well, it's $7. That'd be cool to have.
Yeah,
like I'll get it. Yeah. And then the PS1 version, I looked it up. It's not terribly expensive. I think I saw it was like loose, like, $10 to $15. A complete copy is around 40 or somewhere around there. So it's not too bad.
That's kind of a lot for PS1 games.
I think it is too, because in most cases, sports games like you find for like a couple bucks, even completes like $10. So I'd imagine it's like we didn't even know it existed, and it's probably one of those things where it came out. There's probably like Game Day and Quarterback Club.
Oh,
and
for sure.
Madden, like PS1 is really when like they transitioned like the full 3D era with football, and like that's when a lot of them hit their strides.
That was when I switched over to Madden.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So I'd imagine something like Tecmo Super Bowl, which it looks like those early PS1 games where it's like they're having like these sprites that are sort of 3D.
You know what it reminded me of? Because it came out the same year. Quarterback Club 96.
Yeah, we were talking about that.
Yeah, like I loved that game on Super Nintendo. That was my favorite football game. But when I looked at the PlayStation 1 Tecmo Super Bowl, it looks like those sprites just turned sideways.
Yeah, it's really weird. So I guess it's one of those things where maybe if you're a Tecmo Bowl fan, you might just you would have bought it, you would have been on it, and you would have enjoyed it. But I imagine, I don't know, it just seems like this one flew under the radar for a lot of people because I don't hear any fondness for it. Like I said, like I didn't even know it really existed until you and I were talking about it. I was like, oh, that cover looks oddly familiar, yet I don't remember ever hearing anyone talk about Tecmo Super Bowl on PS1.
I briefly glanced at some reviews, not reviews, but the like star ratings, and like Super Nintendo and Nintendo versions got 3.5 to 4 stars out of 4, whereas PS1 was like 2 to 2.5 stars.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'd be curious. I don't know what other football games came out with it, but I'd be curious to see like what it was up against. I imagine it was just not a good time for it.
Yeah. What kind of surprised me as well, not just the PS1 version, but like on Super Nintendo, there were 2 sequels to this.
Yeah, I saw you noted them here. So it's Tecmo Super Bowl 2 Special Edition, Tecmo Super Bowl 3 Final Edition.
Yeah.
Which sound like just, crazy versions, like Special Edition, Final Edition?
Special Edition almost sounds like they just added some things to the original, which I guess technically they did. I read up that it was basically annual updates, like we're all used to now with Madden games. They had this back then. They just didn't call it like Tecmo Super Bowl 94 or anything like that.
Yeah, it was literally just an updated version, updated rosters, and probably not much touched in the gameplay department. Because I'd imagine, like, they're turning these things out. You didn't really need to. What else could they add to these games back then that they weren't already doing?
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's also Tecmo Bowl Throwback 2010. Did you play this one? I don't think I owned it.
I do own it on my... It's lost on my 360.
It's one of those.
Like, I don't think we can get it anymore, but luckily I still have it downloaded on there. It was pretty cool at the time. I wasn't paying full attention, but it has none of the licenses because EA obviously got everything NFL back in like 04, 05.
Yep. Yeah.
And so this one, the teams are just the team cities. So you can play as San Francisco and Chicago and stuff, but that's all. Like, you don't have a mascot. They still do have the team colors too, so they're doing everything just short of, getting trademark infringements.
Do the logos look similar in any way, or is
no.
it just the city names?
From what I remember,
stylized?
I don't think there were any logos. I think it was just the team colors.
So yeah, they really had to play it safe then, I'm sure.
But it was still good old-fashioned Tecmo fun. The the rosters were all fake people. Like I said, they didn't have the league union on their side, but you could fully customize. So you could go in and individually rename every person to whatever the most recent like stats are for the teams.
So that's cool. So it's like you didn't have players you actually recognize.
Yeah.
But you could technically tailor the game to fit however you want it to be. Even though you just wouldn't have the names and licenses and everything.
You could pick rosters from like certain years and then just put them all in there if you wanted to sit down and take the time.
This one, did you say you played it a little bit, or did you get really into it?
It was what I didn't realize was that it was based on Tecmo Super Bowl. But that plays just like the original Tecmo Bowl that I played, just with more plays to pick from. And it did one of those things where you could hit like the right bumper or the left bumper, one of those, and it would go back to the classic graphics.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I love that. Okay.
You could do it like mid-game too. It was fun. But yeah, there was nothing... It wasn't like revolutionary, but it didn't have to be because we hadn't had Tecmo Bowl in so long.
Well, the name just says like throwback, so it's like I don't know if you're expecting more than that.
Yeah,
I don't know what to tell you at that point. This one I didn't think to check if it's delisted. I imagine it might be because I don't know. I don't know if it's backwards compatible or anything. I don't know too much about this game. Unfortunately,
I forgot to look it up. I was going to search it in the the Series
in the
X
store just to see
store, but. I don't see why it would be delisted.
That's what I thought, right?
It doesn't have the licenses.
Yeah, it's just a football game, like anything else. Yeah. All right, so that's Tecmo Bowl in that series. I think we're ready to move on to sort of I guess this is really my favorite era of arcade sports games because in the early 90s, I think it was 92, 93, NBA Jam came onto the scene. And that was the first iteration of arcade sports from Midway that was totally appeal to someone like me, where it's like I didn't watch sports even as a kid. I might know some players. I actually like the logos and the names more than anything else, right? Because I know any better. But this NBA Jam was we got it at the warehouse for like $10 on the Genesis NBA Jam Tournament Edition, and I loved that freaking game to death. Like my friend and I played it.
That was the one to have.
It was so fun. So in November '97, Midway decided to give the NFL the same treatment as NBA Jam, and they basically got the edict that do for the NFL what you did for the NBA was NBA Jam, and it was really easy. It worked so freaking well. It was headed by Mark Turmel and Sal DeVita. They're both legendary developers at Midway. They've done everything from Smash TV, WrestleMania the arcade game, NBA Jam, Cruisin', Mortal Kombat. Basically any Midway series you probably played when you were a kid, they probably had their hands in some way, whether they were an artist, programmer, whatever else. And this took about 2 years to develop. And they wanted to focus, obviously, much like NBA Jam, on quicker action over typical simulation. So there's like no penalties, no fouls in this game. It's just utter chaos, and it's just absolute fun.
I'm glad it came out in the 3D era, and they didn't try to go with like the graphics of NBA Jam or Mortal Kombat.
Like the 2D digitized version, you're right.
I mean, that would look hilarious, but it probably would play a little slower.
I think so.
This was just balls to the wall, speed, and big hits.
It's so good. And like, it's, I love the arcade. We always talk about the arcade experience and like how much I love that, where it's like, when you walk through, like everything's just loud and like you could kind of pinpoint certain games, right? Like when you hear them. Like Killer Instinct or Street Fighter. You hear when Blitz or NBA Jam is being played.
This had the same announcer from NBA Jam, didn't it?
Tim Kritz. Was it the same announcer, Tim Kritzkow?
I mean, it sounds like it.
I think it might be him.
Like you said, at an arcade, you can hear him or somebody who sounds like him shout out like NFL Blitz.
Oh my god! Yeah, so it's probably Tim Kritzkow. And so it's the same premise as NBA Jam, where it's like I forgot how you get on fire here, but I think it's like you.
Oh, I
don't
forgot.
think you get 3 touchdowns. I forgot what it was. I think you just have turbo.
Maybe 3 sacks. It's like 3 really good plays.
Yeah,
or something like
3
that.
something like that. Yeah, 3 first downs in a row. I don't know what it is. And then you're on fire. Your stats get boosted. God, this game, I really love this game.
You can bomb 100-yard passes
like nothing. This is perfect for me. Where it's like I don't know the inner intricacies of football, right? Like I can't really read plays worth a damn. Like I could probably tell you what the difference between a running play and a passing play.
Yeah.
So this game is simplified for me. It's like here's if you want to run. Here's if you want to throw the ball really far, catch it, and run some more.
There's usually more arrows on the passing plays.
Yeah. Exactly. So this uses a 7-on-7 format, and like we said, there's no penalties or substitutions. And one thing that really appealed to me are power bombs and drop kicks in this game, because when you when you would tackle the other guys,
I remember after you end the play and the guy is already down, you could give him the old Hulk Hogan leg drop
God,
like
it was so
multiple
freaking
times.
cool. Yeah. So this game, like, the arcade experience was what it was, but it was one of those things where you didn't know what you're going to see because there's so much hidden in there. And that was a Midway trademark, right? Like with Mortal Kombat and everything else, where they would put so many different little details in these games that you really have to play the hell of it to understand and see everything it has to offer. Now, this is, in the arcade times where it's like 50 cents a play or something. And with a sports game, it's hard because I think it was like you'd play like 50 cents a quarter.
Yeah.
Right? So it was almost basically like, was it 4 quarters, 50 cents? It was like $2 per game, roughly, if you got through it.
Yeah.
And, that's times 4 people. You're all playing like $8.
Yeah, I remember I didn't play too many sports games in the arcades back in the day. But recently I've played them a little more. And it's like, I guess luckily in NBA Jam or in NFL Blitz, you can get enough fun out of 1 quarter just because both teams are going back and forth scoring a bunch, or hopefully you're getting like some really awesome stops. But like maybe you play a half. I think I've played a half before, but after that you're like, okay,
yeah, you kind of get your fix out of that too.
That's pretty much enough. That's what we were going to see for the rest of the game too.
And also, of course, like if it's more competitive, then you're going to pump in more quarters at the same time.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So I didn't get to play this much in arcades back then. Like I think I might have seen it, at the boardwalk, like when I was younger. But it was really great when it actually was ported to home consoles. So the N64 and PS1 got a release in September 1998. Windows got a version in October 98, which I can't imagine playing Blitz on a 1998 PC.
No.
It must be a very different experience.
All you have is mouse and keyboard, or just keyboard.
Yeah, or ugly joystick and control support. I don't know. And the Game Boy Color also got a version in December 98, but I've not played that version. So the console versions, there's definitely some small concessions over the arcade ones. Like, the N64 is probably the preferred one because it also has 4 ports, so you can do 4-player right off the bat.
Oh, yeah.
I believe the PS1 version is only 2 players. I don't think it has multi-tap support.
Really?
I don't think so.
God,
Yeah,
that's a missed opportunity.
I'm pretty sure I don't own that on PS1 to check either. But we'd have to look it up. But
Yeah.
I imagine it's definitely at least 2 players. I don't think it's 4.
Luckily, it came out on Dreamcast too with the 4 ports.
And it was later. Well, the later version was on Dreamcast as well. Yeah, it was, exactly. But the PS1 and N64 versions were actually really damn good. I remember we both rented this one at different times when we played each other's houses because it was just that damn fun. Again, I didn't know much about like seasons or the flow of football. I just knew what I was supposed to do, and that was just to get the win. And this game was giving me every tool I needed to get to
go
win.
up the screen, and progress the football.
And just mash buttons. And that's another thing here is like much different than simulations. You didn't need to know much of anything in this game. You had very basic controls. Like, I think there was like a couple buttons you really needed to know, which was basically like tackle, dive, stiff arm, and turbo.
Turbo, yeah.
Right, that was it. And you can mash any of those because like you could cancel everything out. There's so much speed to this game that I don't think you really need to care much about what plays you're playing.
No.
Each of the teams had their stats, but I would say like it didn't really affect much. I don't think there was one that was like, heads and shoulders above any of the other teams in this game.
No, I mean, I played as the Bears back then, and they always had terrible stats, and I could still hold my own.
Yeah, there you go. See? You could play your favorite teams and be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this was, like I said, this was on N64 and PS1. So Blitz did have some legs. It had a lot of releases over time. So when Blitz was first released, that was sort of like, I would say it was after the peak of arcades. Like, would you say it's more like on the downturn of things, like when home consoles were getting better and better, and like
for sure,
like late '90s is kind of when arcades were kind of falling out of style. They're just a little bit more expensive. People were getting their arcade experiences at home with their home ports, and it was totally sufficient compared to what the 16-bit era was.
I mean, we were totally fine with the graphics of this game on the N64 and PlayStation, but then when the Dreamcast version came out, I'm sure it looked a little closer to arcade.
Yeah.
And then that's when you really didn't need to go to the arcades anymore.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a good point. Dreamcast is really when I feel like arcade ports were getting more one-to-one because the Dreamcast could do that.
Yeah.
So it didn't stop Blitz from releasing multiple releases over that time, though, because despite arcades kind of falling out of style, they released NFL Blitz 99, which was a 1998 update. So that really just had updated rosters, like they didn't really do much to the game. One cool thing, though, is that the arcade cabinet had a slot for the N64 controller pack, like the memory card.
Oh, I remember that.
Because you could put your created plays in the arcade, which is kind of cool. But I don't know how many people would be doing that back then. NFL Blitz 2000, that was a home port of NFL Blitz 99, and that was out on Dreamcast, N64, PS1, Windows, even the Game Boy Advance. And again, there was no significant changes to this. This is really just a roster update. Blitz 2000 Gold Edition, only on the arcade. that was, again, just another update. I don't think there's anything significant there. And then 2001 is probably the most significant version of Blitz because it was like, the most updated of what they had at the time. And this one added instant replay, some mini games, a few other things. And, reception at the time said, like, it's fine for Blitz fans, but it's about time it needs a makeover. And there's one version I didn't know existed until I looked this up, but it's NFL Blitz Special Edition for at Blockbuster. It was a Blockbuster rental exclusive.
Yeah, I heard about this through that podcast I listened to a long time ago, where they were doing every single N64 game. And
they covered this one.
They happened to get this edition, and it really, to them, it felt like just another roster update.
And that's all it was.
Yeah.
That's all I looked up, and there really wasn't much info on this game. It was really just a roster update with nothing else really added to it. And as a result of it being a Blockbuster exclusive, it's pretty rare. It's like one of the rare sports games by far. It's $100 for a loose copy, and if you manage to find a complete copy, which I imagine is really difficult because I don't imagine many Blockbusters kept that stuff.
Yeah.
It's $275.
Yeah, whoa.
So it's up there. And then after 2001, this is like the weird era when Midway was like kind of reeling the arcadiness of their game series back. Like even NHL Hits was like, went to like a pro kind of role. And this is when Blitz was going like more simulation style, but not heavy sim like Madden. So they released 3 games. There was Blitz 2002, 2003, and Pro. These were all released in the PS2, GameCube, Xbox era. And, it has like its arcade roots, but you could definitely tell that they feel like arcades were not fashionable at the time. So they meant more on the sim side. So I know these got like middling reviews. I didn't play the Blitz version of these. I did buy it. I just haven't played it yet on PS2.
I mean, they just said in the last reviews, it's time for a makeover. This is what happens.
This was the makeover.
Yeah.
Yeah, what do you expect?
Clearly, it did not need a makeover.
Yeah, it needed you guys playing a Blitz game for what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there was also 2 games released on the 360, PS3, Xbox, PSP, and PS2 era. Blitz the League 1 and 2. Did you play these at all?
No, so I don't even remember the 2002, 2003 ones that you mentioned. I just remember it going from the Blitz that we played to these weird, like,
they weren't Blitz.
No, they were like HBO series.
Yeah.
The version of football. And, like, it was crazy. You could do, like, couldn't you do, like, drugs? And,
so I did get to play a little bit of this. I think I had rented it on GameFly or something like that because I was hoping it was going to be the next Blitz game, right? Because it was on next-gen consoles at the time, 360. And, yeah, it's a much darker game. Like, they went kind of the route with, like, Narc, where you could do drugs and everything was just like trying to be scummy and dark for the sake of being scummy and dark. And this is the same thing. So like if you're injured, you could juice up, as they called it, which is basically take steroids, which is sort of let you ignore the injury and make you more susceptible to more severe injuries. So it's like, I can't imagine playing a football game. You sprain your ankle. It's like, well, I could take time off or I could just take steroids and get through it.
I mean, this was definitely after, like right after EA got the NFL license and took it away from everybody. So this felt more like a middle finger to the NFL than a game that they wanted to have people play.
That's a good point, because this was 2005 for Blitz League 1 and 2008 for Blitz League 2. And yeah, that's the good point. It's like they probably were just bitter about it, and they just made like this sort of satire of the NFL and how they ignore injuries and CT and all the things that they're accused of, right?
Yeah.
And now they're just like, I guess for lack of a better term, taking the ball and running with it. Because I think, I know, so in Blitz League 2, Lawrence Taylor is sort of like the spokesman for that game of sorts. Like he's the only sort of historical football player in the game, because obviously no one else would want any involvement in this thing, because it's just like portraying football in this awful light.
Yeah.
And obviously it's not licensed, so they took their liberties with it. And I think they thought by, at least this is my perception, is like maybe by sort of ramping up the shock value, maybe there's more of appeal for it.
Wasn't there some like X-ray bone breaks?
Yeah, so certain injuries would do like an X-ray cutscene, because again, that was like a trendy thing at the time. Like they had Fight Club. Mortal Kombat 9 hadn't come out yet. Actually, Mortal Kombat 9 was 2009, so it was just after this. But that was the thing, was like zooming into a body part and then showing it snap or whatever else, right? So that was kind of a cool gimmick. Like I do remember that being like a big draw of the game. I just remember this game being very fun to play, which is a big deal when you're playing any football game to begin with, right?
Yeah, because it just didn't have the speed of the classics.
It didn't. It was just grittier and darker football, but without the fun.
Yeah. And
Lawrence Taylor. If you're a big Lawrence Taylor fan, which I know he has some controversies, I'm not too familiar with most of them. But he is like he's front and center in this game. Like he does voices in this game, and his likeness is in here. It's really weird to see Lawrence Taylor in this very dark portrayal of football. So I don't think it was very successful because, I'm kind of amazed that even Blitz League 2 existed.
Yeah.
Because no one talks about these games. I don't hear too much fondness for it. I know they're not terribly expensive if you're looking for them.
It's the ones I see the most at the game shops.
Yeah, because there's trade-in all the time. Like, no one cares for them. I'd be curious to play it now just to see how it's like.
Yeah.
But I know it's not up there with the greats. And then later on, there was sort of a reimagining reboot that I really enjoyed the hell out of. There was NFL Blitz on the PSN and Xbox Live Arcade in 2012. This one was really good.
I think I got this one as well. Like they said, the NFL came back to them, but they didn't want the over-the-topness of it. Like
they had an edict like no late hits.
Yeah,
which is fair.
I was fine with. I mean, because you still had the big hits during the play, which was fun, and it had like the classic speed and everything you wanted.
Yeah, this is exactly what I wanted from it. Actually, before you'd pitched the idea for the episode, I went back because I booted up my 360 to buy some of those games that were getting delisted.
Oh, yeah.
Because the store was shutting down. And I forgot I had NFL Blitz. I was like, I feel like playing that because I was playing NBA Jam before that.
Yeah.
That reboot. And the Blitz reboot is great. I just wish it was backwards compatible on Series X so I could play it instead of having my 360 hooked up.
Yeah, that NBA Jam, what is that new one called?
It's just called NBA Jam.
Oh, okay.
The 2011 version?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one's fun, and I'm glad it's backwards compatible because that one is still...
It's still so much fun.
It fulfills my NBA Jam needs.
Yeah.
But yeah, Blitz needs to come forward too.
It should. I wish it did because it's still a really fun time. It looks pretty nice. It's just, if you played the NBA Jam reboot, it's very much like that. Like, this is just... It makes perfect sense that they sort of rebooted this as well. And it's really fun. Unfortunately, I don't think it's listed anymore. Actually, I'm sure it's gone because of players and likenesses and everything else, right?
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure that some of the... because 2012, there's no way they're going to renew this game. Thinking about it now. So that was Blitz, Deucy. Any final thoughts on Blitz before we move on to the NFL Street Series?
I just need to look for it because, like I told you earlier, I thought I had it. And apparently I don't in any form.
Yeah.
So I got to pick one up for N64 or something.
Before we started recording, I was shocked because I swore you had this too because it seems like such an easy thing to buy and pick up.
Yeah.
You see it all the time. But I was surprised you didn't have it, but I did. Yeah. Really?
You have multiple versions on different systems.
Yeah, I got two of them on Dreamcast because, again, they were so cheap. Like, Blitz, if you want them, most cases you're probably going to pay like, $5 to $10 for a loose version and then like, outside that special edition on N64, they're no more than like $50 complete.
Oh, yeah.
And they're great times. Like, there's so much freaking fun. Definitely go for the N64 or Dreamcast versions, though. PS1's fine if that's the only option, but I'm sure you're probably going to play this on N64 before anything else.
Yeah, you're going to want to have the 4 controller options just in case you have some friends over and you want some classic couch football madness.
Yeah. Pick up and play every time. It's a good time. Yeah. So Blitz, I hope they make a new one. I don't know if they ever will. I think it's definitely due, after 12 years, where it's been.
Yeah.
But it'd be really great to play like a new like PS5, Series X, PC version of Blitz. All right, Deucy, we're moving to the last series we're covering today in our NFL Arcade series. And this one is our home versions because these weren't released in arcades at all. This is the NFL Street Series, which originated on the PS2, GameCube, and Xbox in 2004. Developed by EA Tiburon, is that how you pronounce that? Which they're known for basically all of like EA sports series. Like they've done everything from Tiger Woods, NASCAR, NFL head coach, Madden. They do everything for EA. And so I was kind of surprised that they did like this arcadey take on football. It was published by EA Sports Big, which was created to be like this casual brand of sports games with an arcade twist. And
it was like EA got up all these licenses and they took away these arcade hits games from like Midway.
From existing, yeah.
Yeah, and then they sort of made it their own brand with EA Big, which now that doesn't exist, and I wish it would come back.
Yeah, so I was about to point out, like, the EA Big as a publisher, they made some of my most favorite games on from the PS2 era, like SSX Tricky, NBA Street.
Yeah.
Some of my top games of that era. So they were a big publisher. I wish they would come back, because they also did Def Jam Vendetta, which is like a wrestling thing with rappers and time hip hop. So great. They were on fire at the time. I don't think they really missed back then.
No, this was just like with the Blitz series, kind of spawning from NBA Jam. This one, NBA Street had come out. I think maybe even Volume 2 had already come out before this.
Yeah.
And then they were like, hey, do what you did with NBA, but for NFL again.
Yeah. And it works. So I have two perspectives on this because there's before I get to that, there was 3 games that were released in the series. There was NFL Street in 2004, NFL Street was 2004 or 2005. That was released on the PS2, PSP, which is surprising, GameCube, and Xbox. And I couldn't find why this was, but NFL Street 3, which was released in 2006, was only released on the PSP and PS2. So for some reason, those weren't ported to the Xbox or GameCube at the time.
Well, 2006 would be, closer to 360, wouldn't it?
2006, 360, and 360 and PS3 were out. Depending on, I don't know when the 2006 Street 3 came out.
Yeah.
But 360 came out 2005.
They probably didn't want to develop it for the next generation.
I guess that makes sense. I didn't even think about that because
Yeah.
you're right. 360 would have been out.
They kept it. They kept it PS2 only.
Yeah, what about GameCube though? Well, I guess Wii was out in late 2006.
Yeah, so they
Yeah.
didn't want to do it for that one
So
either.
that makes sense. That might be the case. There's just like there's no reason to develop it when the next gen system's coming out. But NFL Street 1. So like you said, Uzi, this is sort of like the next step of evolution from NBA Streets. I actually think this is a little bit more condensed because NBA Street was like popping off, doing tricks on the court.
Yeah.
This you can't really do as much because of the nature of football, where it's like a little stop and goes.
Oh yeah.
Right, so there's less emphasis on tricks and styling and more like on these big plays and sometimes big hits. Or, if you can fit a style in there like a trick, you can.
Yeah, you could snap the ball and then the quarterback could like put the ball between his legs before
Yeah,
he just
kinda
bombs
taunt.
it. The receivers can run up on the walls, Matrix style, to try and catch the ball, which I didn't utilize enough, but that looked pretty fun.
Yeah, that was the biggest change in here. And I think that's a worthwhile change too because you have to make it as zany as like NBA Street was, and you kind of you're more limited with football, of course. But I think like the wall climb stuff is so freaking awesome
Yeah.
and like goofy.
I really enjoyed the theme of it, where it really is like you're playing in the backyard or you're playing out on the street or in like a weird alley.
Yeah, because it's a 7 versus 7 format, and all the players have street clothing instead of football gear. So it's just like a pickup game, like you said, in an alleyway or, in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
There's a ton of like unlockable courts, I guess we'll call them, or fields in here. You unlock them by playing the NFL Challenge mode, where it's like you create your team and then you challenge other teams to unlock stadiums, teams, and equipments. You can also level up your team, like the XP and their stats. There's a pickup game where it's a lot more condensed, where you make up a team from 40 legends of the time. And there's also All NFL, which you unlock by beating challenge mode, where you can create basically like a dream team of any roster from the entire.
See, now, because at the time, these were all current players or like legends that we might have grown up with. But now, if I got this game, everybody would be a legend.
Everybody would be a legend, yeah.
And it would just, I really want to get back into that and try it out. And really, I did not play this enough, unfortunately.
Me neither. And I think we talked this before recording, but I felt the same way you did, where I was expecting NBA Streets with football. And that was, it's to me, it's like, I don't know how you cannot think that when you're trying to get into NFL Street coming from NBA Street, but it's also not the right expectation to have because of the nature of football by itself and its inherent nature.
Yeah, I really should have approached it more as like the next generation of Blitz.
Yeah.
Maybe without the big hits, but like it was going to be zany.
Yeah. And, this does have game breakers like NBA Street. So the offensive game breaker on the offensive side, it allows you to plow through the defenders, which is cool. So you just like train run them, just like barrel right through them.
Yeah, you could end up like having the entire team hanging off of you.
you're literally putting the team on your back at that point. And then defensive game breakers allow you to get through blockers and cause fumbles. So you could cause more of those turnovers. You can cancel your opponent's game breaker. It's really hard to do. You basically have to try to stop them and make sure they can't score.
Oh, wow.
But, the whole point of a game breaker, much like the name, it's supposed to allow you just basically like a free point or damn close to it, where you really have to really mess up pretty bad to kill a game breaker in this game. When I played this the other night, like I played on an emulator because unfortunately I couldn't find a hard copy anywhere. Like these games aren't at that rare. If you want a copy, like the loose ones are like $10 ish, and if you want a complete copy, NBA 1 and NFL Street 1 and 3 are I think like $20 each complete, and then NFL Street is $40 complete. So they're not
the second one.
Yeah, the second
Oh,
one.
yeah.
Somewhere for some reason it's a little bit more rare.
That's weird. You'd think the third one would be the most because it was right at the end of a generation, and
that's what I thought.
I didn't even know it existed.
Yeah, it's really like no one really talks about that version at all. And all three versions were well received. Like, the thing is like with NFL Street 2, there was a few game enhancements they added. Like there's updated rosters and Game Breaker 2, where now you have to acquire 100,000 style points and unlock a Game Breaker. So that's more like NBA Street.
Yes, NBA Street 2 also added a double game breaker on that one.
Which, God, I would love to cover those games. 'Cause
Yeah.
those are some of my favorite PS2 games for sure. And then also there's like, when you do a game breaker in NFL Street 2, now you have more of like a cutscene where it just shows you overpowering their team or, getting the ball back, which was a thing they did at the time because NBA Street 3 did that too. If you remember, where they'd like the cutscenes during dunks.
Oh, yeah.
So that was like their gimmick, was like they really wanted to show the detail in the animations, which I think doesn't sound so attractive now because it interrupts the game. Like you're watching a cutscene. And also there's more running moves in here, so you could do like more juke spins and like, stiff arms, which also earn more style points. And then the big change in this mode, or in this game, is Own the City, where you're basically winning street games around the city and you can recruit talent. So it's like you beat a team and you basically pick whoever you want from there to add to your roster.
Oh, that's kind of how NBA Street started, was you could own the court and then get like the local hero to join your team. Mm-hmm. It's funny that they implemented that in the second
a little ways away
football one.
For football, yeah. And at the end of that mode, you face Exhibit because, of course, he's in this game. This was like in his Pimp My Ride era. Yeah, he's also on the cover of this game as well. And then he also has like a whole team of NFL stars that you face. And then one cool thing I thought, one cool feature they added in here that I didn't know about was that you can actually import your created player into Madden 2006. Don't know how he looks. Like maybe it's just like stats and maybe some other cosmetics.
That's weird. You'd think it'd be the other way around.
I would think so, right? Yeah. And there's also NFL Challenge, where it's similar to like this is the official mode of the Street series, where you build up of a team in 150 days, and you have to do a bunch of challenges like scoring 250,000 points on Dallas Cowboys, or like
that I don't know if I could even do.
I don't know. Well, I imagine like the scores in here, it's more stylish, like NBA Street is, right? Because NFL Street 1 was much more reserved in its styling.
I was going to say, that one was a little tougher to get game breakers and stuff in.
Yeah, and that's why I didn't like it when I initially played it, because I was expecting NBA Street, but when I played it the other night, I was like, okay, I get it now. Like, as long as I don't expect the over-the-top craziness that NBA Street offers, this is a really fun football game. It's got the level of arcade you'd expect, and I'd say like like you said, like it's more like a Blitz game more than anything else. Before Blitz was, it kind of like ran itself out of the game. Yeah, it went dark. It's great that they end up releasing 2, because these games were very much of their time, and also I just want to point out some of the soundtrack in NFL Street 2. It's got some of the best of 2004 here.
Whoa, that is a weird mashup.
Isn't it just like a time capsule right here? We got Sum 41, Drowning Pool, Exhibits in here, Papa Roach, Nas is in here, Mace featuring P. Diddy. He's in here. Young One, Yin Yang Twins. You remember them?
Oh yeah, no, they're still around.
Oh, they're still around? See, I didn't know that. It's craziness. So again, of the time, but that's also what's part of the charm about these games is the fact that they're rooted in like early 2000s, pop culture. And then NFL Street 3, Deucy, I imagine you didn't play this one either, right? Because this one I also forgot existed. I think I remember stalking this when I worked at Circuit City.
I don't even remember what the cover looks like.
It looks like if you saw it, you'd be like, oh, this looks like NBA Street 3.
Oh, okay.
It's that similar style.
Oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Except it's red. I'll show it to you.
Yeah.
And this one, again, there's not a whole lot they did with this one because it was such sort of like a late release in the PS2 generation. It was also at a PSP version. Game breakers were more involved, so this is more similar to the first game where like you trigger them. There's no cutscene, like you're just basically like a god mode, and your stats are boosted. Game breakers can now be canceled with a well-timed hits on either side, which is I'd say is a good thing, because I think that was one of the things that when we played with NBA Street was like, if you got a game breaker and you're really good, you could get ahead pretty easily, and it was a little bit rough to catch up.
Yeah,
which I think they addressed in later games, but NFL Street had the same problem where it's like if you managed to get a game breaker, it was really hard to catch up after the fact. So they added some balancing in NFL Street 3. And also they expand the aerial moves, so there's more like air tricks, which is kind of cool when you hop around. So it looks even more zany. And there's also a time attack where the whole impetus there is that you're just supposed to score a touchdown as quickly as possible. This also did get some accolades. It was winner of the Best Alternative Sports Games of 2006 from IGN. And despite that, it got like lukewarm reception, around 70% for both versions.
I'm trying to think of like what its competition would have been in 2006.
There's not much on the arcade side. Like I think Blitz League was just coming out, and no one was really looking at that with fondness or looking forward to that.
No, this was definitely a better alternative.
Yeah, this was a year after NFL 2K5, so basically, Madden was the only football game in town at this point.
Yeah.
And I think, by this time, like just in general, like these arcadey EA big games just kind of fell out of style for lack of a better term. I think people were just ready to move on. Like, there were just so many SSX games, so many Street games, because I don't know if you remember, but they also had FIFA Street. These were also coming out around the same time.
Yeah, I think that only got one of them, didn't it?
I think it got 2 releases, actually.
Oh, maybe.
Which is even surprising they got that, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's soccer with
because
Street.
that was definitely the third one. It was NBA, NFL, and that was sort of like when people were like, okay, nope, that's enough.
Yeah, I just think it's just oversaturation, which tends to happen, and these kind of, people don't enjoy it as much, and then you have Madden, which was getting better at the time because it was definitely stepping in the next generation. Like, I think, is Madden 04 regarded as like one of the best, right?
Yeah, 04 and I want to say 05 a little bit.
05 a little bit, yeah. So again, these were just, I don't think these had the appeal that that they thought it would. So I think it just kind of fell out of style and they just weren't as loved as the other games. Plus, for me, from my perspective, it doesn't get better than NBA Street Volume 2.
Yeah,
that's like the top of like the EA big games as far as sports. But SSX is my favorite, obviously.
Tricky. SSX Tricky was my favorite of that one.
Yeah. Yeah, so unfortunately I don't have too much to say about Street 3. I did play Street 2 when it came out because I rented it at the video store and I did enjoy it. But it was the same thing. Like, I just couldn't get into it. I think I was just not into football arcade games at the time, or I just was expecting so much like NBA Street that I kind of set up my expectations and disappointed myself.
You might have also been expecting Blitz and it wasn't that either.
That's also possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a weird mashup of both.
Yeah, so I think, I don't know, I'm sure both of us will have to pick these up at some point. I'm definitely just going to have to go probably the eBay route because I can't find these in any store we've been to, which is shocking to me.
Yeah.
I could find the most ridiculous stuff and they're like, oh, this is amazing. I've never seen this.
Here's Blitz the League again.
Yeah, NFL Street, nowhere. Not even on Xbox, not even the GameCube version, nothing. So I guess that's it, Deucy. So any final thoughts on the NFL Street series before we move on?
Kind of what we covered in the Blitz era was we need another Blitz, maybe another Tecmo, something like the throwback or something like that, or just a shot in the arm for these sim games to maybe have a side mode that has an arcadey version.
I would love that because I think for me there's always a place for these kinds of games. Like, I don't necessarily think they need to be like high budget, right? Like, just have like even a bite-sized digital version.
A good example would be the Super Mega Baseball series.
Yeah, that's a good example, yeah.
They're already into their 4th iteration, and it's starting to get a lot more sim-like in that one, but they're still very cartoony. You can just bomb home runs with sparkles and fireworks going behind it. You need like a football version of that, a mega football something. I know I talked about last year, and I got Mike hooked on it. It's called Retro Bowl.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's on Switch. It's on phones. It's a very pixelated. It's even more old school pixelated than Tecmo Bowl was, but it does play that way. Back left to right, very simple play calling and stuff like that. And it is a really fun time. We need something like that, but maybe with updated graphics.
Yeah, I think even if they did like like it's sort of a retro style one, even if it's like in the Blitz arcade style, like those chunky polygon models, right?
Look at when NHL recently came out and they did the throwback to the NHL 94.
Yeah, EA did that. That's right. Was this called NHL Throwback, I think, right?
Yeah.
Is that what it was called?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, where they had like the current rosters, but it was all like 16-bit Genesis graphics.
Yep.
I would pay $35 for that.
Yeah.
No problem for like a Mad version of that or even NBA.
Yeah.
Like 2K milks these series so much. Like, I'm shocked that they haven't done anything in the
true.
way of an arcade game. Like, I would totally play an arcade NBA 2K game, Well, Deucy, I guess that puts us at the end of our football season for this sort of iteration here. And
even as the real football season is just kicking off.
As the real football season starts kicking off now, we're winding down with our football games.
Yeah.
If anyone else out there has memories of, of the Blitz series, Street series, Tecmo Bowl, please feel free to reach out to us at our email at legiongamingpod@gmail.com. And also you can find us on Instagram at Legion Gaming Podcasts. Deucy, any final words before we go for our penalty kick here?
Touchdown.